Now, bullying, it's endemic. It's in our classrooms, our homes, our workplaces, our governments, and on our streets. 56% of pupils in a US study said they'd witnessed bullying at school, and the reality is bullying can ruin lives. Bullying has been linked to 75% of school shootings in the US. Lest we think this is strictly a US problem, it is far from it. A recent study into cyberbullying found that India, Indonesia and Australia stood out as places prominent for social network bullying attacks. There are many facts about global bullying, but here to discuss the big issue with me is Rhiannon, a psychotherapist who has delivered anti-bullying strategies into companies. Hello, Rhiannon.
Hello.
Lovely to finally meet you. You and I have been talking for a number of years now, on social networks. This is the beauty of social networks, isn't it? You finally get to meet somebody, you go, she's as wonderful in real life as she is online. Now, you are a woman who's full of loads and loads of wonderful information, which is why I've brought you in to discuss this, because it's such a serious issue, isn't it?
It is,
Tell us what your understanding of the big picture of bullying.
I think that we get a lot of media about the sharp end, you know, bad stories about teenagers committing suicide because they've been bullied. There's a lot of reportage about online stuff. And I think that people don't realise just how subtle and how much this is, these kinds of behaviours are embedded in the fabric of our entire culture.
Right.
And, I mean, you mentioned some countries there. I think it's a human thing.
Yes.
You know, 50, 100 years ago, we were all surviving and wondering if there was going to be another war. But we have the ability now to start treating each other a lot better.
Right.
And I think also that I get pretty cross when I hear this word bullying, because it makes me think about, oh, people are just going to restrict that into, oh, well, you know, that happens at school, this is kids or young people. I think we should change the language, and the first thing I would do is to say, let's stop using the word bullying, let's call it what it is, which is abuse.
It is abuse.
It is abuse, and it's very demolishing.
Yeah.
And it can be drip, 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 you know, over a period of time, so it doesn't look too dreadful. Right. I think that trauma, you know, you say trauma to people, they think, oh, you know, you're in a road accident, or, you know, you had some huge health problem. But, you know, daily little tiny traumas can absolutely mess up people's heads. And, you know, it gets in the way of functionality.
Yes.
So it's a very big and serious problem.
It is a serious one, and you're absolutely right, because I deplore it also when we automatically assume that bullying is just for kids. And it's an absolute nonsense, because what the government does to people, of course, is also bully them, very vulnerable people. We see bullying within families, we see bullying in the workplace. But as you say, let's call it what it really is, abuse.
It is,
That's what it is, because bullying almost seeks to sort of minimalise it in some way, doesn't it, that sort of description?
It does.
It's a bit like you'll grow out of this.
A bit of a light sort of word. And I think that, you know, that there are lots of different kinds of people on the I don't really like the word mental health, but let's call it the mental health spectrum. From you and I, normal neurotics, right through to people that are so crazy that they have to be managed all the time. But I think that a lot of bad behaviour in the workplace and in families towards one another is a mental health issue. And I don't think people realise that there are millions of people wandering around undiagnosed who are basically acting out on other people for whatever reason. There are lots of reasons why people bully. Sometimes it's just to boost your own self-esteem, to sort of just
make yourself feel better by putting somebody else down.
Feel better, yeah. That's the main reason why it happens. And I think that people don't understand that it's very often not personal. It's almost like you've got your abuse gun and you're just searching for a victim, and somebody just gets in your sights and bam, you know. And you know, I'm a therapist in private practice. I get really cross because every week I see people who are paying me a fee to come and talk about how badly they're feeling about work, or they're at uni and it's not going well, or there's stuff going on in their family. And I just think, do you know what? You're paying me to sort something out which is actually somebody else abusing you. How can that be okay?
I mean, as you said, I mean, and you and I have talked, and you're obviously very discreet, and it's not, you know, I know that you wouldn't be revealing client information, but what sort of percentage are we talking about who would come to you who are either bullying or being bullied? So it's caught up in that spectrum. Is it significant?
It's really significant. I'd say the majority of people that I work with, individual clients, are not feeling too great about themselves, and that other people have contributed to that. Look, you know, I'm quite a tough, you know, I come from South London. I went to a state school. I had to learn how to look after myself and so on. You know, I thought I was pretty, you know, liked myself quite a lot. But I've been bullied a few times in my life, really badly. I was bullied in a job I had in the 80s when I was in my 30s. And I was so freaked out about the way this person was behaving towards me. I used to throw up in the car park sometimes because I was so nervous about going to work. Yeah. And that's not good. No. And actually, I found out down the road later, by accident, that actually the reason why this person had been doing this to me is because I won an award that they thought that they should have. And after that, there was 4 years of misery for me. And you know, you feel trapped, you've got a mortgage, you've got kids, you know, I got out in the end.
It's a horrible situation.
Well, it's damaged me. I never want to go back and work in corporate again.
I was bullied as a child at school, in primary school. Horrible, really ostracised. It was a small primary school, and the girls took it in turns not to invite me to the party, and I was the only girl at primary school.
That's really common.
That was horrible, and it really does set you up, doesn't it? And so it made me determined that once I got into a position where I could speak up, I wouldn't allow anybody else to feel like that. But I tell you, unfortunately, bullying has a very bad effect on me because it tends, when I come up against a bully, I want to bully them back. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want to be like that. That's me going down to their level, isn't it? How can I rise above that?
Well, I think the other half of this is, whilst, you know, we're saying that people don't necessarily invite bullying, you know, that you can be a hapless victim. There are a lot of things that we can do within ourselves, inner work on ourselves, to make ourselves bully-proof. For example, if you're daft enough to worry too much about your appearance or how you can perform in any given situation, you know, whether you're doing well at school or whether you're socially acceptable and so on, if you're upset about those kinds of things, then you will make yourself into a target. But of course, it's all very well just to say to people, oh, you know, don't be upset about it, you know, you're fine the way you are, da-da-da. There needs to be a deeper, a more culture-wide approach. Okay. And I think it starts with education. Yes. You know, I don't care what anybody says. I get a lot of attacks from people that say, oh, you know, you don't want to go into therapy and plunge around in your childhood and blame people. No, you don't. But you are programmed as a child. You are. And you can reprogram. Right. So I think that people need to work on themselves a bit. And, of course, that's why people come and see me, I guess, partly. But I think education, as usual, is the answer. You know, some families... I've known families where teasing, practical joking, constant sort of taking the mickey out of each other.
All that stuff winds me up, something rotten.
Well, it's meant to wind you up because all the time somebody's doing that to you, they're not looking at their own stuff. And I think that's where it starts. I think in a lot of families, you know, why is it that some kids bully at school and some kids don't? Yeah. It's because they're learning this in their family.
It's learned behaviour.
It is. And teachers, you know, some schools have a brilliant anti-bullying policy in place, which works.
And some schools completely ignore that it's happening, don't they?
Well, there are reasons for that, you know, because you've got the Ofsted shadow over you all the time, and you want to be a popular choice. But, you know, recently a young friend of mine, a child was staying up all night and enraged and saying, my head's boiling, mummy, my head's boiling, I'm going to explode, like 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. And my friend went into the school and spoke to the form teacher who said, oh, boys will be boys. And when I heard this, I said, you need to write a letter to the school, you need to copy it to the education authority, and then you will get action, which is how you do it. Because they will try and brush it under the carpet. And teachers aren't required to have what I call emotional literacy. No. Teachers are people.
That's a pity. It's a pity, really, isn't it? Well, it is, because they did. I mean, I had a case recently that upset me greatly, actually. It's a friend of mine, and her son had just started primary school, and on his first full day there, the teacher penalised him for, in her words, misbehaving. He put more loo paper down the loo than he was required to, and she stood him under a black cloud, which she had, and I just was like, okay, they want to scar this kid for life.
That's so bad.
I am so grateful that my friend had the wherewithal to remove her child from that school, because that is a hide into nothing. If you start out on your child's first day like that, they put you under a black cloud. What a terrible message, because that's teachers bullying, isn't it?
And let's
public humiliation,
let's put some protocols in place. And not everybody knows that 10 years ago, in 2004, the Health and Safety Executive put in place a directive that said that if you had a company which employed more than 2 people, you had to have anti-bullying strategies in place, and it has been widely and routinely ignored. Because bullying gets mixed up with ambition, getting on.
Sure.
You know, people aren't nice. They're not nice.
They can be well mean.
That's right. But what people don't realise is that, you know, you can extrapolate the whole chain of affect, if you like. So, somebody's getting bullied at work. They're not happy. They're not going to produce what they're supposed to be producing. They may not cooperate. They may do all sorts of games. You know, just as you said yourself, that when somebody bullies you, you want to bully them back. Yes. It's a negative behaviour that doesn't serve anybody else, and it interferes with functionality. So, hey, you know, I don't have to tell you, of all people, that we are up against it.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
are.
Let's stop all this stuff and just...
Well, let me ask you some advice, because parents often say to me, and I never had the answer myself, because thank God my daughter hasn't been bullied, okay, but parents often say to me, my child's being bullied, do you think it's good advice to tell my child to strike back at the bully? And because it's a myth, isn't it, if you ignore it, it's going to go away, but do you think striking back is the solution to it?
No, there's been research that shows that actually you're just escalating the problem.
So what is the solution?
The solution is to invoke the authorities, unfortunately. That's the best solution, to involve other people. And the reason for that is because I know that my son was bullied at private school, and my younger cousin, he's 20 years younger than me, he said, I'll go in the playground and sort it out. And I said, no, I don't want that to happen, because I knew that the child that was bullying my son was in a bad way, came from a very difficult family.
So you had an insight.
Yeah. If somebody's bullying, if somebody's bullying, they're not happy, they're doing, it's an act out. I can't emphasise that enough. And they need some support, they need some help, they need some exploration and process. And yeah, that's time consuming and no one wants to do it, but that's the choice that we have, isn't it?
Do you think it is the choice we have? Do you think that's a solution, is for us to become almost more sympathetic or empathetic rather to the bully?
Well, I just think it's understanding, isn't it? I mean, you know, I'm not going to get into arguments about how we sanction people or punish them for bad behaviour. But if we persistently ignore that people will act out because there are bad things going on in their family, I mean, you know, children are not developmentally, they're unable to be responsible for their behaviour up to a certain point. You know, you've got a child. It's all very well just saying, oh, just punish them, just put them in a corner somewhere and just punish them, because it's going to get worse later on. I mean, all these school shooters, look at their history. Looking at what I hear of the history of some of these people through a therapist's eyes, you think, God, how did nobody ever pick this up? You know, people just ignore really wacky, bizarre behaviours, you know.
I mean, and so really what we need to do, what you and I both, we need a sea change, don't we? It's like, it's so seismic what needs to take place. What little steps can we, because, you know, obviously a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So what little steps can we take?
Well, I'm pretty busy, but if somebody else wants to start a campaign of education, please do.
And what could we put in place for that education?
Difficult, really, because the education system is in the, you know, all its power is in the power of the state. And as you said yourself earlier on, the state
is a bully.
Is a bully at times, and is full of people that don't know this stuff.
Yes, and it's also full of people that, you know, assume because they're in some kind of authority that they can tell others what to do, and their tactics are indeed bullying as well. So, but, you know, just like if somebody's listening to this now and they're going through a situation, I mean, because obviously there are common traits across all forms of bullying, aren't there? And so if somebody's in a situation where they're like dreading going into work tomorrow, and I know that feeling, I'm not saying about TPV, of course, because I can't wait to get here, but I have been in a situation like you where I was bullied ruthlessly by an editor for about 3 years, and I was so anxious and so sick. I used to be sick some days. It was just so awful. So what advice would you give to someone that might be listening to this right now, dealing with this issue? You
know, the broad advice I would give is get help. Seriously, you need to get help. And people have massive issues about asking for support.
They do.
Oh, I can't do anything about that. But,
I know.
But
it is a worry that because they feel weak, don't they?
Yes. Don't you know? Don't allow yourself to feel disempowered without getting any support. But I think the other thing is, I know that people are very attached to material things, and that they worry a lot about their mortgages and where the next meal's coming from, and so on and so forth. But I don't actually think any job is worth your own mental health.
I totally agree.
I really don't. And I know that's easy for me to say. So if you put the two things together, get help, even if it's your boss that's bullying, I wish that I'd flagged up.
I know.
I did moan to his boss. I did moan to his boss, and she was like blank, you know, just because he was a valuable member of the line team. So, but I'll just tell you actually that don't give up hope, because I bumped into the person that bullied me, you know, a few years later in the street, and I got an apology unasked for. And I was told, well, you know, I was under ridiculous amounts of pressure and stress, and I was coming to the end of my career, and I was freaking out and so on, and I treated you all really badly. I mean, you could have knocked me down with a feather. I never expected that to happen.
That's the one. It's an evolution of a human being, isn't it?
Absolutely. It was absolutely brilliant to hear that, and I just bumped into the person in the street completely randomly, you know. So you know. People will educate, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? I don't know. I wish that I had the resources and the energy to start a massive campaign, but if somebody else wants to, I would be more than happy to be a consultant to anybody.
Oh, do you hear that, people? That's the lovely Rhiannon and Daniel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I can count on you to come back and advise me and give me lots of pieces of wonderful information about psychology and psychotherapy and all manner of human things, because you're just the woman to do it.
Thank you.
So thank you. Right, after the break, we catch up on the latest news on alternatives to the global banking system with Occupy's Dr. David Dewhurst. Don't go away.